Welcome to the deep dive, and specifically, welcome to the channel Book on a Shelf. Today, we are immersing ourselves in one of the most foundational, resilient, and I think really human texts of Western literature. Homer's The Odyssey. It is absolutely not just a tale of monsters and magic. It's a profound exploration of identity, patience, and that fundamental human need for home.
That's absolutely right. For this deep dive, we've taken the entire epic poem, in translation, of course, and really tried to extract the crucial, often overlooked details, the things that show why this story still resonates, 3,000 years later?
Yeah, incredible.
Our mission is to navigate this massive stack of source material, moving far beyond just a simple plot summary. We want to give you a shortcut, basically, to truly understanding the divine politics governing the ancient world, the sometimes harsh reality of ancient justice, and the sheer intellectual grit metis, they called it, required for one man, Odysseus, to complete his 20-year journey.
And what's immediately fascinating, right, is that the story, which is titled After the Hero, doesn't actually begin with him. It kicks off with a crisis, a domestic one, political, spiritual even, back in Ithaca.
Exactly.
The king, Odysseus, he's been gone 10 years fighting at Troy, and then another 10 years wandering. And his palace, it's overrun. These arrogant men, they assume he's dead. They're consuming his wealth, pressing his wife Penelope for marriage. So the initial state of affairs isn't some grand quest starting out. It's more like an internal decay. It's rooted in the king just not being there.
Precisely. And the very first thing we see is the divine response to this decay.
Yeah.
It starts up in the halls of Olympus with the council of the gods. Athena, who is Odysseus' tireless champion, she confronts Zeus, the chief god. And the central issue, as she puts it, is how can he stand his ground against the will of all the gods at once?
Right.
Specifically Poseidon, god of the sea. He's furious because Odysseus blinded his son, the Cyclops Polyphemus.
Okay, let's stop there and really unpack that for a second, the divine politics, as you called it. Athena isn't just asking politely, is she? She's using some serious rhetoric. She's appealing to Zeus's sense of cosmic order.
Oh, absolutely. She argues Odysseus is a man of piety, of wisdom. He's suffering unjustly. Meanwhile, the suitors down in Ithaca, they're committing these heinous crimes against Cynia, the sacred law of hospitality.
So she's basically appealing to the universe's moral code, the one Zeus is supposed to uphold.
That's it. And by getting Zeus's explicit approval, she kind of neutralizes the absolute power of Poseidon's rage, or at least she channels it, limits it to specific parts of the journey. And Zeus agrees. He sees the moral imperative. He immediately dispatches Hermes, the guide and giant killer, down to Ogygia Island. His job is to inform the nymph with lovely braids, Calypso, of the fixed decree. Odysseus journeys home. The divine mandate is sealed.
But Athena, she's not one to wait around, right? She's too impatient for Hermes' presumably long journey. She's a goddess of action, of strategy. So she immediately straps on her supple sandals, ever-glowing gold, that let her wing over the waves in boundless earth like the wind. She grabs her rugged spear tipped with a bronze point, that symbol of her authority, both martial and intellectual, and descends directly to Ithaca.
And she arrives, disguised as Mentes, lord of the Taphians, someone known, a respectable trade ally of Odysseus' family. This disguise is crucial. She can't just land as a goddess and, zap everything back into order.
Right, she has to work within the mortal world.
Exactly. Guiding, inspiring, and what she finds in the palace is immediate proof of that moral rot we mentioned. Those swaggering suitors, they're not mourning, they're not governing, they're amusing themselves with rolling dice before the doors, lounging on hides of oxen they had killed themselves. The sources are really clear. They're just living off the king's resources, openly, aggressively.
And the first person to notice this respected stranger, Mentes, is Prince Telemachus. He's described as sitting among the suitors, heart obsessed with grief. We even get inside his head immediately. His mind is fixed on his father, his magnificent father, dropping from the clouds, driving the suitors in a rout throughout the halls. So he goes straight to the guest, completely mortified that Mentes is just standing there waiting at the door. He shows that one remaining spark of Xenia in the whole house.
And Athena's role, as Mentes, isn't to fight the suitors herself. It's to rouse his son to a braver pitch, to inspire his heart with courage. Telemachus is sort of paralyzed by the situation, isn't he? Caught between being a boy and needing to be a king.
Yeah, definitely.
So Athena, by revealing her supposed identity as this old friend of Odysseus, she validates Telemachus' feelings and she gives him a direction: sail out, seek news of your father. She basically gives him permission to act like a man.
And when Telemachus finally finds his voice, speaks publicly, he laments this double blow that's hit his house. First, losing his father, who was kindly as a father to his children. But now, this worst disaster, the suitors who infest our palace day and night,
Hmm.
butchering our cattle, our sheep, our fat goats, feasting themselves sick, swilling our glowing wine as if there's no tomorrow, all of it squandered. I mean, this isn't just bad manners, it's economic devastation. They're trying to bankrupt the house, force Penelope's hand.
And that leads directly to the assembly. Telemachus calls it's his first really adult action. This meeting escalates the whole crisis beyond just the palace walls, out into the community, and then that dramatic bird sign appears.
Mm.
Two eagles, sent by Zeus, flying high, then suddenly wheeling, swooping down, destruction in their eyes, attacking each other, then flying off across the town. It's a terrifying, undeniable omen. Everyone sees it.
The interpretations are so key here, aren't they? Because they represent the two sides in Ithaca. Those who still have faith, and those who are just cynically exploiting the king's absence.
Absolutely. The old warrior Halitherses, he's skilled at reading bird signs. He warns that a great disaster is rolling like a breaker toward their heads. And crucially, he recalls that he actually foretold Odysseus' return, unrecognized by all after 20 years. He's the voice of prophetic truth, of loyalty.
But the suitors, well, Eurymachus speaks for them. They're deaf to it. Eurymachus just dismisses it as babble, says birds aren't all fraught with meaning, claims Odysseus is definitely dead. And his immediate reaction: threaten Halitherses with a heavy fine to crush your spirit.
Yeah, it shows you the suitors aren't just greedy, they're actively hostile to the rule of law, to the sanctity of prophecy. Their control rests entirely on intimidation.
And this whole section kind of culminates with Mentor, Odysseus' old friend, giving this really profound observation on kingship itself. He warns the people gathered there, never let any sceptered king be kind and gentle now. Think. Not one of the people whom he ruled remembers Odysseus now, that godlike man, and kindly as a father to his children. It's such a bitter political lesson in these first two books. A king's rule has to be maintained actively, or his people will forget his kindness and just let the vultures pick his estate clean. Loyalty, it turns out, is a pretty fragile thing.
Definitely fragile. So following that humiliation at the assembly, Telemachus retreats to the beach. He does this necessary ritual, washes his hands in the surf, prays directly to Pallas Athena for help against these pernicious bullies. It's an act of purification, really, and supplication, seeking divine help after the mortal options failed him.
And Athena appears again, but this time speaking with Mentor's voice. She immediately reassures him, confirms his journey won't end in defeat, not if your father's spirit courses through your veins. She puts the burden of proof not on the gods, interestingly, but on Telemachus' own lineage, noting, Odysseus' cunning has hardly given out in you.
Right, it's that critical transition from passive grief to active quest. She promises him a swift ship, a crew, orders him to pack the essentials for a long journey. Wine in jars and barley meal, the marrow of men's bones in durable skins. That little detail, barley meal, as the marrow of men's bones, it just reminds you this is a journey powered by basic sustenance, not the luxury the suitors are feasting on.
And the action needs to be immediate, because the stakes have just shot up dramatically. The suitors realize Telemachus isn't just acting out, he's got real advice. So they quickly plot an ambush, waiting in the straits between Ithaca and rocky Same. They intend to kill him before he can get back home and become a real rival. This is the moment they cross the line, isn't it? From abusive guests to, well, political murderers.
Absolutely, a point of no return. But despite the danger, Telemachus sets sail. He arrives at Pylos, the first stop on his search for news, and he finds the people there on the beaches engaged in this massive, solemn, public religious event, sacrificing sleek black bulls to Poseidon. It just underscores the piety of these decent kingdoms, a sharp contrast to the sacrilege back in Ithaca, where animals are just slaughtered for gluttony.
And right away, we see the power of proper conduct. Nestor's son, Pisistratus, he shows this exceptional sense of tact, offers the golden cup first to Athena, still disguised, remember, before giving the wine to Telemachus. He's honoring the greater wisdom, the status he perceives in the guest, reinforcing those very principles of Xenia the Ithacans have totally forgotten.
And King Nestor, this revered elder, he then recounts the chaotic end of the Trojan War, that disastrous homecoming split for the Achaeans. The split hinged on basically a theological disagreement. Agamemnon urged delay, wanting to appease Athena's wrath. Menelaus urged immediate departure.
And Menelaus got away, but Agamemnon's choice, fatal.
Yeah, exactly. Nestor notes the minds of the gods don't change so quickly. It's a lesson. Feminine anger isn't easily appeased, a grim echo of Poseidon's relentless pursuit of Odysseus.
And Nestor uses Agamemnon's fate as the ultimate cautionary tale, doesn't he? Aimed right at Telemachus' own fears about his mother's loyalty. Agamemnon slain by Odysseus, who seduced Clytemnestra while he was gone. And we learn this detail. Odysseus first had to get rid of the singer Agamemnon had left to watch his wife, sent him to a lonely island to be a trophy for the birds.
That detail about the singer is horrifyingly specific. It shows Aegisthus didn't just walk in and seduce the queen. He had to silence the voice of loyalty, the moral conscience in the house first. Orestes eventually gets his revenge, holds a funeral feast in remembrance of his hateful mother and cowardly Aegisthus. Nestor really drives the point home. Homecomings are deadly. The loyalty of a wife and the absence of treacherous men is critical for survival. You see why Odysseus is so cautious later on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, armed with this pretty heavy warning, Telemachus travels on to Sparta, arrives at the magnificent halls of Menelaus. And the visual contrast is stunning. The halls shine with a radiance strong as the moon or rising sun, a palace of peace, stability, wealth. Completely unlike the besieged, impoverished palace back home.
And Menelaus, despite his current happiness, he shares Telemachus's grief, laments that the gods robbed Odysseus of his return. He directly compares the suitor's behavior to a deer that bids down her fawns in a mighty lion's den, only for the lion Odysseus to return and deal them a ghastly, bloody death.
Yeah.
It's not just a prophecy, it's a veteran warrior guaranteeing violent retribution. Adds weight to what Halitherses warned about earlier.
Now here's one of those fantastic, surprising details the sources give us. Helen, back with Menelaus, she tries to manage all the grief in the room. How? She drugs the wine with Egyptian medicine, calls it a cure for grief and rage, and she explains its origin. Every man is a healer there, more skilled than any other men on earth. It's crucial, I think. It shows us that even in this world of epic myth, real-world knowledge, pharmacology, it exists alongside gods and monsters. A moment of quiet intellectual power amid all the drama.
It really is. And Helen also validates Odysseus' signature quality, his metis, that cunning intelligence. She recalls his daring feat in Troy, scarring his own body with mortifying strokes, throwing filthy rags on his back like any slave he slipped into the enemy's city. He risked total humiliation, torture even, just to gain intelligence. It confirms his willingness to endure absolute disgrace for a strategic goal, foreshadows his plan to return to Ithaca as a beggar.
And the ultimate news finally comes from Menelaus. He recounts his own tough journey and the prophecy he got from Proteus, the old man of the sea. He confirms the divine mandate. Odysseus is alive, held captive by the nymph Calypso. This is the first concrete, confirmed piece of information Telemachus has received in, 20 years?
Huge. And we get one final piece of context about heroism, too. Menelaus' own destiny is revealed. He won't die a mortal death. He'll be transferred to the Elysian Fields, where life glides on in immortal ease for mortal man. A reward for his divine lineage, his marriage to Ellen. This shows Telemachus that while some heroes get eternal peace, his father's destiny is rooted firmly in the painful, mortal task of getting home and seizing justice.
Okay, so now the focus shifts completely, away from the sun's search, onto the hero's isolation. The divine decree has been issued. Hermes, the messenger, is on his way to Ogygia, Calypso's island. He skims the waves like a tern that down the deadly gulfs, glides and dives for fish, crossing that vast, indifferent ocean.
And the description of Calypso's island? It's very deliberate. It's beautiful, lush, but static, unchanging. Hermes finds Calypso inside her spacious cave, a great fire blazing, the air thick with the scent of cedar cleanly split and sweetwood burning bright. She's singing, weaving with a golden shuttle. It's a vision of eternal seductive life, but it's also absolutely a prison.
And where's the hero of endurance in all this? Not in the cozy cave. Odysseus is found way off on a headland, far from that domestic bliss. He's weeping live, warm tears, just wrenching his heart with sobs, gazing out over the barren sea. He's not just weeping for home, is he? He's weeping for the active life, for challenge, for risk. Calypso saved him when Zeus struck his ship. Yeah, but now she holds him by denying him the one thing he truly wants, movement, to be on his way.
And Calypso's reaction to Zeus's decree is this fascinating burst of immortal resentment. She protests, "You are jealous of me, as always, because a mortal man lives here with me." She argues male gods get away with having mortal lovers all the time, but female gods, instantly thwarted. It's a moment of raw, divine gender politics. But ultimately, she has to submit. She acknowledges the absolute, unchallengeable will of Zeus.
But even with the decree issued, Odysseus, the master of caution, of skepticism, he refuses to just take her word for it. He demands Calypso swear a solemn binding oath that she plots no more treachery. I mean, after 10 years of war, 10 years wandering, facing treacherous goddesses, monsters, trust just isn't in his vocabulary anymore, is it?
Not at all. She complies, though, and Odysseus immediately shows his pragmatic skill. He builds a raft, uses an auger, 20 chopped trees, makes it as wide as the broad hull of a large cargo ship. He's not relying on magic here or divine aid for this part. He's relying entirely on his mortal shipwright skill. That's the essence of his self-reliance.
His escape, though, pretty short-lived. Poseidon, the Earthshaker, spots him from the mountains. He realizes the other gods have intervened. His personal vendetta is being bypassed. And his rage is immense. He uses his trident, churns the waves into chaos, whips up all the gales from every direction, basically restarts the storm that destroyed the rest of the Greek fleet years ago.
Odysseus is completely overwhelmed, and this is where he expresses his greatest despair. He laments, wishes he died fighting over Achilles' corpse at Troy, got a hero's funeral, rather than this anonymous, watery end. A huge wave spins his raft, the mast snaps, he's battling these giant, rearing whitecaps. He's truly alone, rescued only by the intervention of another sea goddess I know, who gives him this divine, life-saving veil.
So after days adrift, utterly exhausted, Odysseus lands on the shore of Scheria, the land of the Phaeacians, and he uses his primal intelligence again, buries himself in a fine litter of dead leaves, enough to cover 2 men over, even 3, just to sleep. Athena then showers sleep upon his eyes, delivering him from all his pains and labors. He's transitioned from the realm of divine magic, Calypso's island, back toward the world of civilized people.
And that transition is orchestrated by Athena. She guides Princess Nausicaa, daughter of King Alcinous and Queen Arete, down to the beach. The cover story is domestic washing clothes for her brothers, who need fresh-washed clothing when they go out dancing.
Yeah.
But the divine reason, facilitate the hero's rescue. And the contrast between the wild, storm-tossed beggar and this young civilized princess, it's the perfect narrative bridge.
The moment they meet is just a masterclass in diplomacy. Odysseus, covered in brine and filth, approaches her cautiously, compares her not to a mortal, but maybe goddess, or perhaps this magnificent young palm tree he once saw in Delos. And then Athena steps in, makes him appear taller and more powerful, so he transforms in Nausicaa's eyes, from a terrifying wreck to someone who, wow, now he seems like a god. This instant transformation is a necessary step, isn't it? Back toward reclaiming his kingly identity.
Definitely. And Nausicaa instructs him to follow discreetly. She's worried about the immediate, toxic gossip of her people. She calls it the sea dog's nasty gossip. She paints the picture for him. Now, who's that tall, handsome stranger Nausicaa has in tow? Where'd she light on him? Her husband-to-be, just wait.
Yep.
Nod. That detail is essential, even in this idyllic, semi-mythical land. Reputation, social pressure, they're powerful forces. They have to be managed, just like back in Ithaca.
So Athena shrouds Odysseus in a mist until he reaches Alcinous' palace, a place of marvelous splendor, built of quarried slabs. And this is a truly unique kingdom. We learn the Phaeacians glory in our ships crossing the foaming seas. They care nothing for bow or quiver. They're master sailors, blessed with speed, but they're essentially pacifists.
And King Alcinous immediately promises a convoy home. He invokes the sanctity of suppliants, recognizing that a stranger coming as a suppliant evokes the same delight a brother does. This society represents the absolute perfection of Xenia, the total opposite of the greed and betrayal in Ithaca. And they're willing to pay the cost of helping Odysseus, an act which Poseidon will punish them severely for later.
Right, turning their ship to stone. But during the feasting before that, Alcinous calls for the inspired blind bard, Telemachus, who's prized by all the people. The Phaeacians host games, and Odysseus, still regaining his strength, gets taunted by this guy Euryalus, calls him a mere sailor trading back and forth, more concerned with cargo and his profit than athletics. That slight just hits right at the core of Odysseus' pride as a warrior, a hero.
Oh, the reaction is immediate, visceral. Odysseus, driven by anger, asserts his latent power, hurls a discus way beyond anyone else's mark. Then Telemachus sings a tale about the Achaeans' fate, focusing on the story of the wooden horse, built by Apius, detailing Odysseus' trickery. And the song, so true to his own life, his own pain, it causes Odysseus to just melt it into tears.
That moment is so revealing. He's weeping over his own glory, his own story, compares his silent grief to a woman weeping over a fallen husband. His heart is strained by loss, separation, yet he's surrounded by strangers who think he's just a beggar. This display of raw, hidden emotion finally prompts the Phaeacians to insist. Reveal your name, tell us your story. The storytelling itself becomes the path back to his identity.
And so he does. Odysseus reveals his name, Laertes' son, known for subtlety, for wisdom, and begins the core narrative of the epic, a tale spanning 9 years of impossible trials. The sources spend 4 whole books on this recollection, and rightly so. It defines him as the great survivor. His tale begins with the Cicones, illustrates the consequences of indiscipline right away. His men plundered their farms, wouldn't leave when told, leading to a counterattack where 6 men-at-arms were killed from each ship. They failed to retreat immediately because they were too drunk on the spoils.
And this issue of indiscipline, it's immediately amplified with the famous encounter at the Cyclops cave. This is that classic battle, right?
Yeah.
Metis, cunning against brute physical force. But Odysseus reveals his own fatal flaw here, too. He ignores his crew's wise advice. Steal the goats, the cheeses, and leave immediately. Why? Because he waited, hoping to see the Cyclops and what gifts he'd give. This stubborn, dangerous curiosity endangers and ultimately costs his crew dearly.
And the Cyclops, Polyphemus, he represents total barbarism, slams that huge rock door shut as easily as one might put a cat back on a quiver, immediately violates all norms of Cynia, butchers 2 men for dinner. The door, the huge rock no mortal can move, it symbolizes that impossible physical obstacle that traditional heroic strength just can't overcome.
So the revenge has to be calculated, not powered by muscle. Odysseus blinds him with an olive stake, hardened in fire, boring it into his eye like a shipwright bores his beam with a shipwright's drill. The imagery is just incredibly vivid. Shocking. The eye sizzled around that stake, making this horrible sound like a blacksmith plunging a hot axe into ice-cold water. It's industrial violence, craft applied against raw nature.
The escape is pure genius. The crew ties themselves underneath the thick, fleecy ribs of the rams. They just walk out hidden in plain sight. But then comes the tragic, defining blunder of the whole voyage. Odysseus, driven by hubris, needing that eternal fame, Kalios, he shouts his real name from the ship to the blinded giant. That single act of asserting his personal glory cements the wrath of Poseidon, the Cyclops' father. It pretty much dooms the rest of the voyage.
They continue their journey, eventually landing at Ithaca, home of Circe, the sorceress, and his men are turned into full-grown swine by her wand and drug. Just like that.
Yeah. This is where Hermes intervenes again. Gives Odysseus the counter-magic, the antidote, Maldisli. The plant has roots black, flower milk white, and significantly, it's difficult for mortals to pull out, but gods have power to do anything. Reinforces that limit of mortal knowledge, right? Odysseus only survives because divine intervention gives him access to knowledge beyond his mortal reach.
And Odysseus uses this divine protection to force Circe into swearing that oath against treachery. Shows his relentless paranoia, probably stemming from that Agamemnon story. He demands she free his men before he'll even endure the taste of food and drink.
And she complies, transforms his men back, makes them taller, more handsome than before. After they stay for a year in luxury, Circe reveals the next unavoidable journey, the ultimate trial for a Greek hero.
That unavoidable path, the descent into the underworld, the Nicaea. Circe instructs him, you must travel down to the house of death, there to consult the ghost of Tiresias, seer of Thebes. This descent isn't required for battle, but for information. Wisdom is the only path home now.
And before he even speaks to the prophet Tiresias, they're shocked by the first ghost they see, Elpenor, a comrade who died back at Circe's house in this tragically mundane accident. He was drunk, slept on the roof, got woken up, forgot the ladder, plunged headfirst, his neck snapped from the backbone, just like that.
Awful.
And he begs for a proper burial. Once his orb planted on his tomb, a simple monument to a failed sailor. This small ghost just brings the high drama of the underworld crashing back to the reality of human carelessness.
Odysseus finally speaks with Tiresias, who, even in death, has everlasting vision. The definitive prophecy is delivered, lays out the exact terms for survival. The warning is twofold. Avoid the cattle of Helios on Thrinacia Island. Avoid them at all costs, or his ship will be destroyed, his men lost, and he will come home late and come a broken man, all shipmates lost, alone in a stranger's ship. The roadmap for disaster is drawn in perfect clarity.
Then follows that deeply emotional encounter with his mother, Anticlea. He left her alive when he sailed for Troy. She tells him she died not from disease, but from longing for you, my shining Odysseus, you and your quickness, you and your gentle ways, that tore away my life that had been sweet. He tries to embrace her 3 times, but she just fluttered through my fingers, sifting away like a shadow, dissolving like a dream. It's a moment of profound, painful non-connection. Highlights the agony of those lost years.
He encounters other famous shades, too. Agamemnon, still enraged by his wife's treachery, warns them, never indulge her too far, be sure to hide the rest. Reinforces the need for caution when he finally gets home. A warning Odysseus totally internalizes. And maybe the most famous quote of the entire epic comes from Achilles, the great warrior. Declares he'd rather be a slave on earth, tending land for some poor farmer, than be king among the dead. Affirms that even the most glorious death pales compared to a single mortal life.
And Odysseus also gets validation of his lineage, learns about his son Neoptolemus' bravery at Troy, how he never showed fear, never flicked a tear, a powerful counterbalance to the shame and paralysis Telemachus faced initially. So the journey to the dead gives Odysseus not just prophecy, but also emotional closure and critical political advice.
So they return from the land of the dead, fully informed, and face the final perils described in Book 12. Circe had warned him about Scylla, the six-headed monster, and Charybdis, the whirlpool, gave him specific strategic instructions on how to pass them.
Right, but we have to remember, before that, Circe also advised him on the Sirens. That was a crucial test of intellectual discipline. Odysseus had to plug his men's ears with wax, but he insisted on being tied to the mast so that he could hear their song. Why? Because the Sirens sing about the deepest knowledge. They sing about everything that ever happens on the fertile earth. This is the ultimate test for the man of Metis. He risks death not for wealth or glory, but for forbidden knowledge. Proves that defining curiosity is still intact, but maybe now it's controlled.
He survives the Sirens, only to face that narrow strait. Circe explicitly warned him, don't arm yourself. Fighting a god-sent monster is futile. Yet Odysseus, unable to trust fate completely, he arms himself anyway, believes he can fight, and Scylla instantly snatches 6 of his finest men, lifts them up, screaming out their desperate cries, comparing them to fish struggling on a hook. This is the price of his final small act of defiance against divine advice.
And then comes Thrinacia, the fatal stop, the point where all of Tiresias's and Circe's warnings converge. Despite the grave warnings, the men run out of food during a month-long gale. Zeus loosed a ripping wind. The problem isn't the god's direct action yet, it's mortal weakness, starvation.
Eurylochus convinces the crew to break the sacred oath, butcher the sacred broad-faced cattle of the sun god, Helios. His logic is desperate, chilling. A faster death to choke down on the sea than to waste away, starved to the bone on a desolate isle.
Oh, the consequence is terrifying, instantaneous. The sources describe this supernatural horror. The meat, both raw and roasted, bellowed out on the spits. They heard a noise like the moan of lowing oxen. It's the sound of the sacrilege echoing back at them. Even in death, the cattle accuse their killers. Zeus, at Helios's demand, strikes the ship with a white-hot bolt, kills everyone but Odysseus. The lesson is brutally clear. Metis, courage, they can save you from monsters. But indiscipline, disregard for the sacred, that will destroy you completely.
So Odysseus finishes this incredibly long tale. And the Phaeacians, having heard probably the most riveting travelogue in history, they're moved by his immense suffering. They load him with treasure bronze, gold, robes, actually more plunder than he could ever have won from Troy. They deliver the sleeping hero and his treasure to the shores of Ithaca.
But the divine consequences for helping Odysseus, they're immediate. Poseidon, still furious about the easy return, complains to Zeus, enacts that ancient prophecy. As the Phaeacian ship returns home, it's turned into stone, right outside their harbor, effectively ending the Phaeacians' practice of convoying guests, a physical demonstration of the cost of hospitality when it defies the gods.
When Odysseus wakes up, he doesn't even recognize his own land. Sees this rugged place, not fit for herding horses, yet not too poor. And his first thought, he suspects the Phaeacians betrayed him, dropped him off on some random island. I mean, think about that. After 20 years, his first reaction to finally being home is skepticism. Fear of treachery, that's the toll of his journey.
Athena appears, first disguised as a young man, but she soon reveals herself, calls him an impossible man for his ceaseless wariness. Together, they hide the immense treasure in a haunted, hallowed cave. Then comes the critical transformation. She transforms him, shrivels his supple skin, strips his curls, dims his eyes, dresses him in filthy rags, turns him into an old and broken beggar, so that he would seem appalling to all those suitors, even your wife and son.
This disguise isn't just a physical shield, is it? It's a social weapon. Allows him to enter his own kingdom without warning, gauge the moral landscape completely undetected. And his first mission, given by Athena, go to the swineherd, Eumaeus, who is true to you as always, loyal friend to your son, to Penelope. His first point of contact isn't the high court, it's the deepest loyalty found in service.
And Eumaeus treats the beggar with immediate hospitality, fulfills that sacred rule. Every stranger and beggar comes from Zeus. The beggar Odysseus tries to test Eumaeus, offers a prophecy of his master's return. But Eumaeus refuses to believe it, says Odysseus he'll never come home again. His grief is just too deep for false hope. The raw emotion from Eumaeus is so palpable. He grieves most of all, saying, "Never another master kind as he." This deep, unshakable loyalty is exactly what Odysseus is searching for.
Meanwhile, Telemachus returns, guided by Athena, escaping the suitor's murderous ambush. The reunion with Eumaeus is described with such profound tenderness, like a father greeting his darling only son, home now in the 10th year from far abroad, covering him with kisses.
Athena then appears, visible only to Odysseus and the dogs, interestingly, and commands Odysseus, "Reveal yourself to your son." She restores his appearance, makes him taller, supple, young. His ruddy tan came back. Telemachus, wonderstruck, terrified, thinks he must be a god. Then the father and son weep, just raining tears on the ground before reining in their emotion. They have to plot. They discuss the overwhelming numbers of the enemy, 52 from Delition, 24 from Sam, 20 from Zacynthus, 12 from Ithaca itself. This is not a fair fight. It requires divine help and serious cunning.
So the stage is set for the ultimate moment of decision. The bow contest in Book 21. Penelope sets the contest, declares whoever can string the massive bow, a gift from Iphitus, and shoot an arrow cleanly through 12 axe heads will win her hand. This challenge isn't based on strength, really, but on the unique, forgotten skill of the true king.
Exactly. And the scene emphasizes the emotional weight of that weapon. Eumaeus and the cowherd, Felicius, they weep when they see the bow. It's a symbol of their lost master. Antinomus mocks them, "Yokels, fools." Leodes, the prophet among the suitors, he tries and fails, says the bow is a bow to rob our best of life and breath. It's a weapon that just resists anyone unworthy.
Just before he attempts the feat himself, Odysseus takes Eumaeus and Philoetius outside, reveals himself. How? By showing them his identifying scar, got it on Parnassus hunting with Autolycus' sons. A wild boar's tusk had gored his leg. This scar, a painful memory, it's the absolute proof of identity, necessary to secure the absolute loyalty of his few allies before the massacre begins.
Back inside, Antinous objects violently when the beggar asks to try. He fears the humiliation if this tramp should actually succeed. Penelope defends the stranger's right to try. Then Telemachus, finally asserting that authority Athena wanted to instill, commands his mother to retire. The bow will be a matter for the men, especially me, since power in this house is justly mine. The authority has formally transferred from the wife to the returning son, clears the way for the violence.
While Eumaeus locks the women in their quarters and Philoetius secures the courtyard, Odysseus effortlessly strings the bow. The description is famous. He tunes it as easily as a musician tuning a lyre, twanging the massive bowstring. Shoots the arrow cleanly through all 12 axes. The sound of that string, it's the death knell for the suitors.
The contest is over. The reckoning begins. Book 22. Odysseus throws off his rags, vaults onto the threshold at one physical point of safety and power, and declares, "Look, your crucial test is finished now, at last. But another target's left that no one's hit before." He targets Antonius first, strikes him in the neck, the goblet falls, thick spurts of blood came flowing. That single act transforms the hall from a feast into a slaughterhouse.
The battle that follows is chaotic, but contained. Telemachus arms himself and the loyal servants. They secure Melanthius, the disloyal goatherd who'd mocked the beggar, tie his feet and hands behind his back, hoist him up a lofty pillar near the roof, beams to suffer until dawn. A calculated, prolonged punishment.
Athena, disguised as Mentor, stands with them, but she only intervenes decisively when needed, holds up her man-destroying aegis from the roof, driving the suitors into immediate panic. This confirms that while the mortals have to do the fighting, the justice itself is divinely sanctioned.
Leodes, the prophet among the suitors, pleads his innocence, claims, "My hands are clean." But Odysseus replies that Leodes prayed for Odysseus' goal to stay unrealized so he could marry Penelope. He hacks the prophet square across the neck, demonstrates that neutrality in the face of treachery. Impossible. The hall is covered in corpses, heaped like fish dragged onto a beach, twitching, lusting for fresh salt sea. The imagery is brutally non-heroic. It's butchery, disguised as divine justice.
But even after all that carnage, Penelope remains skeptical. Book 23. She's been warned repeatedly by Agamemnon's ghost in the underworld. She knows gods and men alike plot wicked schemes. She worries she'll be tricked by some man who dreams up wicked schemes. So she sets the final, most intimate test, ordering the servant Euryclea to move their massive marriage bed.
And Odysseus, furious that anyone would dare move the object central to their bond, immediately describes in detail how he built the bed. From the trunk of a living olive tree, shaped the base out of the trunk itself, made it unmovable, literally rooted to the earth.
This specific, private detail, known only to them, it shatters her resistance. The bed isn't just furniture. It's the physical, rooted, unmoving symbol of their stable marriage. It survived the 20 years of chaos. Penelope weeps, rushes to embrace him, confirms the reunion that had been held off by caution, by skepticism, by grief. The reunion is finally complete. They reveled in each other's stories. Sleep never sealed her eyes till all was told. The circle of the 20-year journey is finally closed.
Wow, what a journey.
It really is. This journey we've taken through the source material spanning divine politics, brutal survival, relentless patience, and that ultimate violent act of justice, it just shows us the immense value of strategic intelligence, metas, and moral endurance. The Odyssey teaches us that even when you're facing impossible odds, the combination of cunning and preparation and the ability to tell true loyalty from treachery, those are the ultimate weapons for survival, for restoration.
And the ultimate theme is the difficulty of getting home, isn't it? For 20 years, Odysseus' biggest enemy was Poseidon, god of the sea. Yet, what truly doomed his men wasn't the god's rage in the end. It was their own wild desire, their inability to curb their own actions, just as Tiresias and Circe warned when they slaughtered the cattle of the sun on Thrinacia. The external enemy was brutal, sure, but the internal enemy, greed, impatience, that was fatal.
Exactly. And we leave you with this provocative thought based on that exact failure. In a world of infinite information, instant gratification, what is your Helios cattle? What single precious resource or moment of moral discipline must you resist exploiting or consuming? Whether it's time, attention, maybe a principle, in order to complete your own long journey and claim your rightful place. Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Homer's foundational epic here on the channel, Book on a Shelf. If you enjoyed gaining this shortcut to being well-informed and understanding the enduring power of these ancient sources, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for the next episode.